It's noon in the capital. This is our time. The top news at this hour. I'm Vitaly Klimenko in the studio. Today in Odesa is a day of mourning for those who died during the downpour. Rescuers have completed their search operations. Due to the bad weather, 10 people died there, including a child. Most of the water accumulated in underground parking lots. Eliminating such flooding is the most difficult task. Rescuers from other regions arrived to help the people of Odesa. Let me remind you, this was due to the massive downpour. A red danger level was declared in Odesa. Public transportation was not running, and schools and kindergartens switched to remote learning. Last night, Russians attacked the Zelenskyy depot in Odesa. As a result of the shelling, a train engineer was injured. He is receiving all the necessary assistance. This was reported by Oleksiy Kuleba, Ukraine's Minister for Community and Territorial Development. According to him, the Russian army struck the railway infrastructure. Nearly 50,000 people in the region are without power. Thousands of consumers. Energy workers managed to connect the damaged infrastructure to other sources wherever it was technically possible. Repair work is ongoing. One person was killed and another 15 were injured as a result of a Russian shelling of Balakliya in the Kharkiv region. Among the wounded is a 4-year-old child. This was reported by the Regional Military Administration. One of the missiles landed near a residential 5-story building. After the explosion, a fire broke out, burning apartments and passenger cars. In the Chernihiv region, electricity outage schedules have been introduced following a Russian attack on the energy infrastructure. A massive strike caused a systemic accident. More than 300,000 consumers in several districts have been left without power. In Chernihiv, most boiler houses have stopped operating, and some homes have no hot water. Since last night, hourly power outage schedules have been in effect in the region. Local authorities have urged residents to conserve electricity. The schedules are promised to be cancelled once the situation stabilizes. Restoration work is ongoing. All last night, Russian forces attacked the Donetsk region with strike drones. In Drushkivka and its suburbs, 7 hits on residential infrastructure were recorded. There are wounded. In Kramatorsk, at least 8 Monia-type drones struck residential areas and the industrial part of the city. At least 6 apartment buildings and power lines were damaged. No casualties were reported.
Somewhere, probably about 10 flashes and a really loud bang. Well, you could hear glass shattering somewhere. I live in the neighboring building, and my bedridden mother is here. Well, this apartment is mine too, but my mother is bedridden. I came out onto the balcony, and shrapnel hit right into the bedroom wall. All the windows were blown out.
Is your mom okay?
Oh, just a little scratch. From the shrapnel, right? Yes.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Denmark for the European Political Community Summit. He has already held a brief meeting with Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen. For more details on what's happening in Copenhagen, our special correspondent for Freedom TV in Europe, Vitaly Sizov, will tell us more. Vitaly, welcome. The floor is yours.
Indeed, it has already started. The meeting is being held in the format of the European political community. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived here. His workday actually began a bit earlier than the meeting itself. In the morning, he met with Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and Norwegian Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store. He made a proposal. He has already spoken at the plenary session, and in fact, he was one of the first to speak. The session was first opened by the Danish Prime Minister, then Antonio Costa, the President of the European Council, spoke, and then, from the guest of the event, from the organizers. The first to speak was Volodymyr Zelensky, naturally, since he was in Denmark, which is under constant Russian pressure, including the use of drones. He offered Ukrainian expertise in fighting drones and in building a European wall for protection against drones. Let's give him the floor.
Today, we will discuss many things. The most important issue is that today Europe is truly facing the threat of drones. and Ukraine has relevant experience in this area because of the war, perhaps the most real in the world. Of course, we will not stand aside and will support Denmark, because they are truly our friends.
Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen even said that Ukraine is a one-of-a-kind expert in the field of drone warfare. And naturally, Ukrainian expertise should be utilized. She emphasized, speaking at the plenary session, that Vladimir Putin has not managed to achieve a single goal he set for himself in Ukraine. He failed to overthrow the government, to capture Kiev, or to defeat the European Union. She highly praised Ukraine's contribution to the overall European defense. And we also have her quote.
Unfortunately, the only expert in the world right now in countering drones is Ukraine, since it has to deal with Russian drones almost every day. We are not moving fast enough on all issues. I think this means that everyone underestimated the scale of the threat coming from Russia. I'm not saying we haven't done anything. In fact, we are doing a lot. And I hope everyone will understand that we should see Ukraine as the first line of defense.
There are many leaders here, not only from the European Union, but the topic of Ukraine is in the spotlight. It's the main issue in the discussions. Literally every speaker mentions it. And so did the Prime Minister of Estonia. Kristen Michael called for increased pressure on Russia. He specifically focused on the shadow fleet. In his opinion, it will be difficult to ensure security in Europe without effective deterrence of the Russian Federation.
First and foremost, today we are focused on Ukraine and European security. For us, it is absolutely clear that it is Russia that is escalating the conflict on NATO territory and in Ukraine. Putin should be pushed toward negotiations and peace. What is politeness for us? For them. Secondly, this means increasing pressure, which implies the seriousness of the new sanctions package aimed at the energy sector and everything else. In addition, it is necessary to deal with the shadow fleet, which is also an environmental problem and provides Putin with money. According to some estimates, just under half of his military spending comes from the shadow fleet.
Polynary clearing, opening. The summit continues, its work goes on, and there will be a break. During this break, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will have bilateral meetings with other European leaders. We will inform you about the results of these meetings later. I also want to emphasize that this summit is informal. These are informal meetings. The discussions are more open, but still, we shouldn't expect any decisions. We shouldn't expect any concrete decisions with specific figures. At these meetings, such decisions are usually formed and prepared. Studio.
Vitaly, thank you so much. We were joined by Freedom Europe's special correspondent, Vitaly Sizov. He spoke about the European Political Communities Summit in Copenhagen. Russia must be held accountable for the war against Ukraine, and the aggressor must also pay for its aggression. That's according to the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. The European Union is discussing a mechanism to provide Ukraine with an interest-free reparations loan using frozen Russian assets. This issue became one of the main topics at the informal EU summit in Copenhagen. The head of the European Commission emphasized that the initiative will not only ensure the supply of weapons to Kiev, but will also strengthen the European defense industry. More details from Victoria Chistiakina.
There is a legal way to seize 140 billion euros of frozen Russian assets, said the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. These funds are planned to be directed toward Ukraine's defense. In addition, the European Union wants to use part of the money to finance its own defense industry. Von der Leyen also outlined the specifics of the reparations loan to Ukraine.
The loan will not be paid out all at once, but in tranches and under certain conditions. We will strengthen our defense industry by ensuring that part of the loan is used for purchases in and with Europe. Importantly, the assets will not be confiscated. Ukraine must repay the loan if Russia pays reparations. The perpetrator must be held accountable.
Right now, the issue is not so much about whether it makes sense to use the frozen Russian assets. Most of Kiev's partners agree on that, but rather about the mechanism for using them, experts explain. For example, one option could be to finance the loan through new Eurobonds guaranteed by EU countries, instead of directly using Russian assets. France considers this option to be the best. Finding cash on financial markets by issuing new debt obligations guaranteed by the European Union and national budgets is a very good thing, President Macron stated. The European Union is considering a mechanism in which Moscow would remain the nominal holder of the funds. However, in reality, Kiev would be able to use them.
This is a formula that does not involve confiscating Russian money. It provides that Russian money is transferred, and when the war ends and Russia has to compensate Ukraine for the damages, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, then from that amount, the money Ukraine has already used will be deducted.
EU leaders face the difficult task of overcoming Hungary's sabotage, which is blocking initiatives to support Ukraine. The European Commission has found a legal way to exclude Budapest from the decision-making process, it writes. Policy. The thing is, all 27 member states must vote to approve the loan, which means Orban could once again veto it. According to media reports, EU lawyers have developed a scheme that will allow the decision on the proposed reparations loan for Ukraine to be made by a qualified majority. The EU initiative is both a financial tool to help Kiev and a political signal to Moscow.
We are working on the reparations loan to move as quickly as possible. But of course, not all member states are ready. Not everyone supports it yet. So there is still a lot of work to be done. I can't give an exact timeline, but we're trying to do everything as quickly as possible. We're working on it. This also requires a discussion of our methods. This is scheduled for October, both at the Foreign Affairs Council meeting and at the European Council meeting.
In March 2025, as part of the G7 initiative, Ukraine received the first tranche from the UK, secured by revenues from frozen Russian assets. In Kiev, this was called a mechanism that makes Russian funds work for Ukraine. The country must recover, including at the expense of frozen Russian assets, according to President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.